talking to Brandon Huffman, National College Football Recruiting Editor for 24/7 Sports. And with the NFL Combine coming up, I wanted to revisit a couple of primetime commits coming out of Arizona. They're now going to be participating in the Combine, a really strong group in Christian Kirk, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Oliver, and Levi Wallace. First, let's start with Christian Kirk. We all knew that he had the big-time playmaking ability, but how did you assess him coming out of high school, and how did he either surprise you or have those expectations?
I wouldn't say he surprised me. What I love about Christian Kirk is I love telling the Christian Kirk story when I first heard about him. It was the very first year of the Semper Fidelis All-American Bowl, which is no longer exists. But the first year they had it, it was down in Arizona, and one of the practices was at Saguaro High School. And one of the old assistant coaches at Saguaro comes up to me and says, hey, Jason Jewell and I were there covering that practice. Says, hey, UCLA just offered Christian Kirk. And Jason looks at me, he's like, Christian Kirk, like the little freshman? He said, yeah, they just offered him. He's like, well, who offered him? Noel Mazzoni. We're like, wait, who offered? Noel Mazzoni hasn't even been hired yet. At that point, he was still at Arizona. He had just been let go at Arizona State. It's like, yeah, apparently he's going to be the new offensive coordinator. So I was more concerned with the fact UCLA was hiring Noel Mazzoni as their offensive coordinator. Jason Jewell is more excited about the fact, oh my gosh, there's this freshman who's already getting a Pac-12 offer. About a year later, I got to see Christian Kirk for the first time in Las Vegas at the National 7-on-7 tournament, and just watching the kid move. He was a sophomore at that time, watching just how electric he was, watching how quick he was, watching him move. It was so much fun to watch. He wasn't the biggest kid in the world, but my goodness, his route running, his explosiveness, his electricity was so key. Fast forward a couple of years to his senior year, we have been going back and forth. This kid needs to be a 5-star. This kid needs to be a 5-star. This kid needs to be a 5-star. Our scouting director at the time didn't think he was a 5-star player. That scouting director moved into a new role. Immediately, we named Christian Kirk a 5-star. We get together for our next staff meeting. Oh, I see you guys named Christian Kirk a 5-star. Yeah, we did. And watch how good we're going to look when it's all said and done. 9 months later, he ends up being the SEC Freshman of the Year, puts up some great numbers at Texas A&M. So going back to even when we heard about him as a freshman and then watching his career at Texas A&M, one of the least surprising things that I've seen over the last few years is the production of Christian Kirk in college.
Mark Andrews, he was a receiver at Desert Mountain, obviously paired with Kyle Allen, but he became one of the premier tight ends in Lincoln Riley's offense. What was your assessment of him when he was in Scottsdale?
What position did you say he played at? He was at Oklahoma?
He was a tight end.
He was a tight end. Weird, because for 3 years, we were getting grief because we kept saying he's going to be a tight end. He's going to be a tight end. He's going to be a tight end. Jason Jewell would say, I'm getting so much grief because I keep saying he's going to be a tight end. Finally, when he committed to Oklahoma, I said, Jason, we got to make this pick. He's going to be a tight end. Let's move him to tight end in the rankings. We moved him to tight end in the rankings. He ends up being a Mackey Award candidate, being as an All-American tight end. That guy was a tight end from the day his body started growing. Another guy, it was a no-brainer with that size, with that skill set, with that athleticism, for as big as he was, for the matchup nightmare that he was. I mean, Baker Mayfield won a Heisman Trophy largely because of the playmaking ability of Mark Andrews. And again, an easy to call, he was going to be an elite tight end.
One of the most confusing recruitments I've ever experienced was Isaiah Oliver. This guy did just about everything you could on a football field, but only one Power 5 offer, and that was Colorado. Now he's getting ready for the NFL draft. What did you see out of him when he was over at Brophy, and how have you seen him grow over the years?
I remember he was rated pretty low. He was like a high 2-star, and Jason Jewell and I, kind of went back and forth. Should we make him a 3? Do we leave him as a 2-star? And we actually had a couple people on the Colorado staff that said, we think you guys are making a mistake here. We think you have him too low. So went back, watched Isaiah Oliver's film. Jason and I made the call to move him up to like a mid-level 3-star, and he outperformed even that ranking. But that was one of those cases where Colorado knew they had a guy. They found a guy that they didn't necessarily want to have us promote the fact that he was a sleeper and it was a steal, but they said, hey, go back and take another look at him. go back and just take one more look, one more assessment of him, and see if he maybe is a little bit better than where you have him rated. He obviously was, but we still probably underrated him compared to what he was in college. And I think he's one of those that's going to make us look foolish when it comes to the NFL draft. But more importantly, he made a lot of Power 5 schools look really foolish, including a couple in his own state who didn't really give him the time of day. And Mike McIntyre truly benefited from that.
While we're on the topic of under the radar, I don't know if there's a more under the radar guy coming out of high school in this draft class than Levi Wallace, the Tucson defensive back. He walked on at Alabama and then became a starter for the national champions. Was he on your radar at all coming out of high school?
No, I mean, it's hard enough. Usually if there's a kid from Tucson, we're going to know about it. If there's an Alabama caliber kid in Tucson, we're going to know about it. But Levi Wallace truly came out of nowhere, because not only are you walking on at Alabama, you know the caliber of players you're going to have to beat and have to match up against and have to outperform in practice each and every day to even just get on the depth chart, not to pass up on the depth chart, just to get on the depth chart. What he did was so remarkable, but no, he wasn't on my radar at all whatsoever.
Brandon, thanks for the time as always. Great stuff and great insight on a couple of former Arizona Prep stars.
Thanks a lot, Jordan.